BodyBags, where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe BodyBags. Of course, back in session with another collaborative effort. Tonight, we got Lonnie, Tara, and Tats, and Glenn, aka BDG Reviews. Not here is Brad. We were really kind of hoping he would join us. This really is the genesis of this idea tonight. Looking back at Roger Corman, a top 5 of his produced films was Brad's idea. And so unfortunately, he couldn't be with us tonight. So we decided to just run with the idea anyways. And it was a great idea. I'm really excited about what, our list might look like in the end. And so I guess we ought to just for a minute, just maybe, I mean, it'll come up anyways, but Roger Corman just passed, of course, this year.
Yeah.
And of course, these days you get a lot of, that. I think it was Shelley Duvall just passed.
Yeah.
There you go. Another reason to throw on The Shining or Popeye or whatever she was in. But he was. What's that?
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, you guys remember back in the day, she used to have that TV show she created, Fairy Tale Theater. Where she did like all the fairy tale stories, and they were always like big name actors. Like you had like what was it, Robin Williams and The Frog and the Prince, and Paul Rubens was Pinocchio, and she did several of them herself. And like they did Three Little Pigs with like Billy Crystal and Fred Willard, and Jeff Goldblum played the big bad wolf, and Malcolm McDowell. They did Red Riding Hood, Malcolm McDowell, Mary Stevens. Sorry, I just.
Oh. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if I was aware of that. It seems vaguely familiar, but interesting. But Roger, it was May 9th he just passed on. And a lot of, grief over that. But I mean, the guy was 98.
Yeah.
Dude lived a full life. I don't think you could wish anything out of life more than that, to live to like 98 and have done as much as he has done in whatever it is that you have put yourself to. And for him, it was a life of film and directing and producing and acting. And it always cracks me up. I always forget that he's in Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's not the only one. There's another guy in there that plays a detective that I think is uncredited. If you're just watching close enough, you're like, holy crap, I forgot he's in that too. So
there's a little bit where George Romero shows up.
In Silence
of the Lambs, yeah. Yeah, the part where they Jodie Foster's talking is the last time her and Lecter are talking. And those guys come around, and the children's like, okay, and they're like trying to pull her away, and he's like, Clarice, your case file. Right. One of the guys standing there you see is George Romero.
Oh, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
Wow. That
is George Romero. I know him when I see him, so I was like, yeah.
Well, I kind of got excited initially looking at the long, because we're talking specifically movies he produced, which were 491 freaking movies. Super, that's insane. And his contributions are just I mean, there's no limit to what he did in terms of ushering in new people, directors, and a lot of these people will be mentioned tonight, I'm sure. But I know for me, I didn't realize growing up as a kid, especially in my teenage years, how much he was influencing me in terms of film as a producer until I put this list together. And amazing, because much of my top 5 is steeped in nostalgia more than anything. But it's movies that really played near and dear to my heart as a kid. And he was behind all of them as a producer. So I mean, that's pretty.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. So I don't know when I ever came into that point in my life where I'm just like, there's this guy named Roger Corman and he's alive and does all of this. I don't know when that happened for me exactly, but do you guys have a moment when?
Well,
Not like I've always sort of known about Roger Corman. I've always like known the name and everything. I think probably the first time that I like, I don't want to. One of the first times that I really sort of saw him as like like as big as he is, like that I really sort of realized it. They have this thing, and you can find it on YouTube. It's like it's like an hour long show or whatever, and it's hosted by Clive Barker, and it's a bunch of directors all like around a table, and they have dinner, and they're like essentially making up a story as they go along. Like one will start, and then they'll move on to another. And Roger Corman was in that, and I remember just thinking, like I remember the first time I saw him, I'm like, oh, yeah, Roger Corman. And I was like, when I really thought about it, I was like, Roger Corman's done a hell of a lot for like horror as a whole. I mean, that's not even counting, like all the comedy stuff and all like the sci-fi stuff and everything like that. Just for horror, he's done like I don't know. To, how can I put this? There's a certain class of person in genre history, if you will, that make big footprints that you don't necessarily realize are from them until later.
Yeah.
And you don't always realize, like you go see a movie and you're like, oh, that was a pretty fun movie. And then you're just like, oh, Roger Corman produced it. And it's always surprising the sheer amount of stuff that he was involved in. And that's for me though. That's it.
well, I think for me, like, coming into Roger Corman was just in a very general way because I remember as a little kid, my parents would watch a lot of his movies on television because they were watching older horror movies and stuff. I mean, especially the Poe films that he did with Vincent Price. We watched those a lot, and and I didn't think much of it. I would see the names like, oh, okay, Roger Corman. Didn't think much of it. Same thing like screenplay by Richard Matheson is like, okay, didn't think much of it until later on and stuff. And, like when I started reading Fangoria magazine and would read like books about like classic horror movies and stuff like this, and I would keep seeing the name, okay, Roger Corman and stuff, and then like I would start to find out, wow, this man accomplished a lot. He made a lot of cheap movies and stuff like this, and um, but at two, like he made good movies. They may have been cheap, but they were good, and you know and then also too is like of course you find out like this guy created so many so much talent it's like so many people start because of him you know and that was the thing like people were going to Hollywood and everything back in the day because they wanted to work for him because he gave everybody a chance it's like sure you may have to start at the bottom work your way up but eventually it's like you would get a chance to direct or produce or whatever it was you wanted to do and you're sitting there like, man, that is impressive, because especially in the Hollywood system, like, yeah, good luck trying to work your way up to a director. But it's like Roger Corman, like you hear all the, you hear everybody from like Joe Dante to Martin Scorsese to Brian De Palma and Francis Coppola and all Jack Hill and all these people and say, yeah, okay, you had to, you kind of start at the bottom and you had to learn. You had to learn like how to handle a movie set or how to write, how to shoot, how to do sound, whatever, whatever it was you wanted to do. And then you worked your way up and everything. And then you went to him, like Joe Dante started editing movie trailers for him and stuff like this. And he's like, I really would like the chance to direct. And he did give him the chance, and stuff. Yeah. And so you're sitting there like, wow. And then you think about all the movies he made himself, the movies he directed. And not just horror, but science fiction. He did westerns. He did, he did like
everything.
You know, he dabbled in like every kind of genre and everything else, and then you know, and then when you saw like when he was given time and money, you look at everything he did with Vincent Price, you know, the Poe movies and everything. It's like, and then and then it was like just so cool too that he stepped aside, but stayed on as a producer and just would continue to keep talent up, stuff like that, helping people like James Cameron and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like, man, like now here's the thing. Okay, you guys know I love Mystery Science Theater. I've talked about it, and they made fun of their share of Roger Corman movies and stuff like that. But the one thing that I noticed when they would do it, it's like, yeah, sure, they made jokes about and stuff like this, but I'm actually thankful because it gave me a chance to see a lot of Roger Corman movies probably wouldn't have had the chance to see otherwise, or I just never would have thought about it. And then there were times I was like, okay, yeah, some of the jokes were funny, but you know what? This is actually a good movie. The story is a good idea. You watch something like Teenage Caveman, you know, you watch his old movie, Teenage Caveman, you watch it's kind of like, that's actually a cool concept, especially when you see the twist ending and then like his movie Gunslinger, where you had Beverly Garland. It was like the idea of like the first female sheriff taking over a town in the old West and all that kind of stuff. And then you have like John Ireland's character coming in, and he's supposed to kill her, but he winds up falling in love with her and stuff like this. It's like, you're like, he really told some damn good stories. The only thing it's like if he just had a little bit more money or maybe a little bit more time and everything else, it's like his movies will rival anything that's made today. His movies, so it's not that the man never had talent. You can say that. And so over the years, just seeing everything that he's done, even as something as like Mystery Science Theater, seeing his movies or whatever else, just over time is like, man, I've learned to grow one hell of an appreciation for what he's done and what he's provided to the industry.
I think it's too bad. Just listening to you, Lonnie. I was thinking a couple things. One, it's too bad that Joe D'Amato. I don't think he really understood the possibilities that he had with Film Raj Company, because he was already bringing up some directors and giving them their first cracks at tackling a film, and not so different of a way. But he did it on such a minuscule level. And I don't think he realized. I mean, I think, the great gem and the heat for him, though, of course, I think was pushing Michele Soavi into the director role for Stage Fright. But that it could have been so much more than that for him in that, that small company. But for me growing up, probably, obviously reading Fangoria, they've always have their, Roger Corman bits in there, and a lot of it was looking back, at his life and stuff. But I don't, in terms of the films that I'll go through in my top 5, I don't know if I was ever really making hardline connections between Roger and those films as much as I was just me in those films. Like, oh man, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. As a kid. I was watching this past week. I watched. Is it Attack of the Attack of the Crab Is it Attack of the Crab Monsters? He produced or directed. I caught that on Prime. That was pretty cool. I also actually, for the first time in my life, you're a freak. I actually sat down and watched patiently through the entirety of The Raven. And and I couldn't. It's funny. I was thinking. I wonder if, being that Cronenberg had a connection to Roger Corman, if it wasn't The Raven, he got his idea for that final duel between those two main characters and Scanners at the end. But I was, kind of thinking that, and I love Peter Lorre. I forgot he was in that. I think I tried to watch one or two others. There's actually a lot of Roger Corman on Amazon Prime, and I'm sure there's a lot of Roger Corman on a lot of the
everywhere
streaming platforms. We'll get into that, I'm sure. Anyways, when we start going through our honorables, we'll just knock out our honorables at one time, and then once we get to the top five, you want to Glenn start, and I'll be in the middle, and Lonnie can anchor.
Yeah, sure.
All
Okay.
right, let's do this
So-
thing. Roger Corman.
Roger Corman. So, honorable mentions. I have two, one of which I can show, the other one I can't because I can't find the cover for it. I'll start with that one. Rock and Roll High School. I love that movie. It's so good, so funny. Any movie with the Ramones in it is awesome. And, the fact that Roger did that, I just thought was one of the coolest things ever. And the other honorable mention, I'm putting this in honorable mention because I don't know, I'm assuming someone here will have it in their list, but Galaxy of Terror. Great flick. I'm not going to go big into it, but it's just fun sci-fi horror, and that's something I got to say. Roger Corman is one of the people that kind of brought sci-fi horror to the forefront. Like we need more sci-fi based horror. Just saying. So those are my honorable mentions. Very quick, but there you go.
All right. I got three real quick off the top. Yeah, I'm just a little, I don't know, confusing. I'm almost positive. My one here, Roger Corman, produced, had a hand in producing this one. God told me to. Larry Cohen film. This is the Blue Underground edition that I just entered into my collection, and I just watched this for the first time ever. This movie is so freaking trippy. It starts as a cult like film, but then it goes extraterrestrial, and then you got to actually a scene that involves taking film from. Am I right? Roger Corman produced. I think maybe he or am I? Did I mess up on this one?
I don't know.
I think he.
I thought he did. I don't know, but now I'm certainly having second thoughts and wondering. I could have sworn he did. But there is a hilarious scene in there towards the end when you have this extraterrestrial moment and an alien abduction scene that involves ripping off stock footage from Space 1999 of all things, which was absolutely hilarious to see Eagle One come down, sort of masked by coloring of the lens a little bit, so it wasn't so obvious. But it is Eagle One for sure.
Larry Cohen.
Oh, so I goofed up on that one.
Unless
I don't know how I goofed up on that one.
It was distributed by New World Pictures, which
That's
is
what it
Russell
was. Okay, distributed by New World. Thank you for bailing me out on that one. I know everyone else is fine. Whew. All right, near miss on that one. But anyways, ripping off stock footage of Space 1999 is freaking funny as all, man. He on my next honorable mention. Roger served as distribution producer on this one. Early relationship with the great David Cronenberg, The Brood. I thought that was interesting. I think this is the only time those two sort of kind of work together in a way in terms of distribution or whatever. But Cronenberg, after this movie, of course, his career is about to launch into some really, really great body horror. My third honorable mention, and that'll be it, is a movie that, if I had a better release of this, it might have snuck into my top five. It might have been number five. But it gives me an opportunity to remind people that if you have this release on your shelf, you don't know what rare gems may lie hidden deep within. Dementia 13. Francis Ford Coppola's directorial debut, buried deep in my 50 horror classics. Transfer quality sucks. But when I was looking through my list of movies, and I realized that Roger Corman was producer on this, and I think Coppola was helping him on Youth Racer or some race, some movie, Racers, whatever. But he basically lent him the set and some money that was left over for the production, and really helped launch Francis Ford Coppola's career. Anyways, I know Vestron has recently released Dementia 13, and that was a first-time watch for me. That easily, very quickly, has become one of my favorite black and white movies. I don't know if you guys seen Dementia 13.
Oh yeah.
Dude, the act scenes in there blew me away. I was startled at just how sort of creepy some of them were, and thinking, this is Francis Ford Coppola. Why had we not got another genre film from him since then? I don't know. But anyways, that was what's that?
So, well, we did Bram Stoker's Dracula and Twix. So we got a couple.
Yeah. But I was blown away from that. I don't even know if I knew the movie really existed. And so I kind of fell into it. And then I realized Vestron has a pretty cheap, reasonably cheap release of that. And so that will probably be in my collection not too far from here. So one added to my Blue Underground collection, one that will be added in, but a few surprises already that I didn't realize existed the way they did.
Nice.
Okay. All right. For one of my honorable mentions, one I want to talk, I really enjoyed was The Haunted Palace. This is part of the Vincent Price collection. And this one produced and directed by Roger Corman. And the reason why I wanted to mention this one, I thought it was awesome because, we all know the collaboration that they did, bringing Poe adaptations to life. But I thought this was kind of cool that they actually tried to do a Lovecraft adaptation. I think it's supposed to be.
They still put it under Poe, but
I know that's the thing. That's the sad part. That it's kind of, people attribute it as like another Poe collaboration, but actually, I think it was supposed to be a loose adaptation of the case of Charles Dexter Ward. But yeah. I thought that was impressive. That even though they were known for the Poe adaptation, I thought that was really cool. That that they did try to expand and see if they could maybe do a Lovecraft film.
Yeah.
And also too, plus you got Vincent Price, Lon Chaney Jr., stuff like that. So yeah, I want to make that one of my honorable mentions. Another one that I know this is more of a comedy and everything, but I just this is another Vincent Price, The Comedy of Terrors. I wanted to. It's a really good movie. It's a very funny movie, Plus, you got Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, everything else, and it's just a blast. It's actually a genuinely funny movie to watch. And let's see, what was it? Last one is okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of steal from Rob here. We're gonna go with Dementia 13.
What release is that?
This is who releases? Cultra? I think that's
okay.
Cultra?
I know. Besides Vestron, Film Detective released Dementia 13.
There are so many releases of this movie, but
I still can't believe how great that movie was and how I've never really known about it. That is, wow.
But the thing I think it's funny about is, well, the thing is though, like when you watch the Vestron version of it, it's actually shorter than this movie because. Yeah, it's actually short. This movie's longer because Corman wanted the movie to be feature length. So what he actually did was he actually got Jack Hill to write and direct a few scenes and then put it into this and made it. So when they did the Vestron version, what Coppola did was he went in, edited out the stuff that Jack Hill did. So that's Coppola's version. So like if you watch this version, you're going to see some extra scenes you didn't see in the Vestron version, and you're like, oh, okay, that's because Coppola didn't do those scenes. Jack Hill did those scenes.
Interesting.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. I knew Jack Hill was involved somewhere along the way, which jumped out at me because of Spider Baby and
I forgot to mention the one thing I thought was funny was when it was after Dementia 13 that Corman decided, okay, he's like, I want to go ahead and get Coppola to direct another movie. The movie would eventually be called Blood Rage, and if you get the Arrow Blu-ray, it's like they talk all about this and stuff. But it was kind of funny because what ended up happening was, okay, so he gave Coppola the money and said, I want to make this kind of movie. So Coppola went and did what he wanted to do, and and the thing was like he tried to make a very kind of art house kind of like artsy fartsy kind of kind of the stuff that we know Coppola does. And so he gave it to Corman, and Corman's like, this isn't. Corman was always like, I want commercial movies to sell.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's like I need movies with, I need movies with horror or action or shootouts or boobs or whatever else. I need that stuff. Is I can't really do these kind of art house films. So he turned around. He's like, he goes to Jack Hill, says, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of money. He's like, I want you to write and direct some additional scenes and kind of re-edit this so I can put it out. So Jack Hill goes, he does, he writes, a few scenes, puts in there, tries to make it a little more commercial, gives, he goes to give it to Corman, but Corman's out. Say he was on vacation and stuff. So he gives it to an assistant of Corman's. But the thing was, she wanted to be a writer director, so she took it upon herself to go and write and direct a few extra scenes, and then put it in the movie. So Corman comes back, and he's got this huge, he's got this big hot mess of a movie that he doesn't know what to do with. So what he decides to do is like, you know what? He's like, here's what I'm going to do. Is like, I'm gonna go ahead and it's like, okay, I'm gonna split this movie into three. I'm gonna have the Coppola version, the Jack Hill version, and this other version, and everything else, and I'll just sell it under different titles and everything else. And he did that. And then the funny part is, if you get the collection of Blood Rage on there, it actually has all three cuts of the movie. You got the Coppola version, the Jack Hill version, the other version, and everything else. But it's like that was insane. I just thought that was a crazy story.
I mentioned too on top, just if anyone out there has never seen Dementia 13 by chance, it is on Amazon Prime, and the transfer on that, albeit probably not the best in the world, is a huge step up from the one I got in my collection here. So I watched it twice, actually. I watched it once, horribly, and then I watched it off Amazon Prime, which was a nice step up, but I'm sure it looks probably really good on Blu-ray.
The Vestron Blu-ray looks really good. They did nice work on it. Well, of course, Coppola, remastered that himself. So
interesting. All right, you ready to start?
Yeah, number 5. This is going to be really short because it's Dementia 13.
Is that the Film Detective?
Yeah, Film Detective version. We've pretty much already talked about it. This is really kind of the first axe murder film. Before this point, axe murders on film wasn't really a thing. And it's just a damn good movie. And how's that for the back cover? That's just awesome.
Oh, that scene is insane, man.
Oh yeah, it's so good. And this is a movie that not enough people talk about. People should be talking about Dementia 13 in the same breath that they're talking about Night of the Living Dead. The same breath they're talking about Dracula and Frankenstein and the classics. I almost want to say this almost birthed the slasher genre almost.
Well, it's funny because
slasher, definitely.
Yeah, when you hear people make arguments of what was that, that pseudo slasher that sort of set the stage, nobody ever really talks about Dementia 13.
They don't, and they should, because it's damn good.
Yeah.
The thing is, this particular one's 75 minutes long. It's not a long movie.
Yeah.
But, do yourself a favor, find a copy. I think this was like under $10, I think.
Oh, the
And
scene when he's what's their names found on the hook, pretty
Yeah.
creepy. Yeah.
It's such a good movie, and you know, this says something right here. Just look at the poster and look at the lines. Roger Corman, Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
Right there, right on like the letterhead, you know? It is what it is, and it's damn good.
Pretty awesome. All right, number 5. Okay, so my 5 are all steeped in nostalgia. These movies, from one way or another, in the video store rentals, all that stuff. I was taking them home every weekend, always grabbing this, and then HBO comes along, of course, and I start, setting my alarm for 2 a.m. because I got to see this, I got to see that, and this one was no exception. Number 5, pure slasher all the way, of course. Slumber Party Massacre. My number 5. I was looking at this a little bit earlier. I didn't realize Mark Shostrom did the effects in this one. And I'm sure I would have read about that in Fango growing up as a kid. But in fact, the first of 2 woman directors on my top 5 list. And something that was already mentioned earlier, what Roger Corman did to usher in, women directors and, all of that. But also 1982, my favorite year for film. And this was a fun movie. I reviewed on BodyBags. I can't remember why. We did something, and maybe it was Scream Factory Week or something, volume 3 or 4 or whatever it was that we were doing that week. But I had a blast. I'm glad I got my hands on this, and this is just just a fun slasher, man. Slumber Party, number 5.
It really is. It's such a fun movie, and I mean, surprisingly, it's a feminist slasher film. You don't see that a lot. You wouldn't expect it from the cover. If have you listened to the commentary on it?
I'm not sure if I have or not.
The director goes on about like the poster and everything, and how that was a Roger thing.
I think I have now. Actually, now that you mentioned
it's an interesting little thing.
There's the Scream Factory. If no one has a Scream Factory.
Oh yeah, it's such a fun movie.
Yeah. So my number 5 classic. If you didn't rent this as a kid and VHS out of I don't know what you were renting, but this was an obvious grab and take home and watch for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn. Okay, my number 5 is going to be The Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, nice.
I remember watching this movie a lot as a kid, and just like, of course, the one big thing, the early appearance of Jack Nicholson, and just always remember laughing watching that scene. And I just always liked this movie, and I know it's like, as a little kid, I'd probably be like, probably been like, why would you like this? And just me and my brother, we would sit there and watch it, and just like we would laugh just the way he always said, "Feed me," I need some chow. Also too, I remember like it was so funny that we would watch Saturday the 14th, which I believe was produced by Corman's daughter. I think she produced it. But anyways, like there's the one part like the guy sitting in the liver and looks down at the plan's like, feed me. I don't like the concept of it though. The idea of this Venus flytrap monster that, grows and grows and eats human flesh and everything else. And he's, Seymour's got to kill people. And, it's like on the one hand, like he's doing horrible things, but at the same time, you kind of feel bad for him and everything else. And just, I don't know. I always liked this movie, and, and just, I watched it quite a bit when I was a kid, and I just always had fun with it. And it goes back to like what I was saying, it was like Roger Corman, like, okay, maybe his movies were cheap, but they were not bad,
No.
Like, and it was also too, you had, Dick Miller and Jackie Joseph in this, who, you would fall in love with later on as Mr. and Mrs. Futterman in the Gremlins movies, and stuff like that. I love that Dick Miller's whole thing. He just goes in there, eat all the flowers, stuff like that. But just yeah, I mean, I just always remember. I don't know, as a kid, this movie just always related to me, and I just always had a blast watching it and everything. And it's like even though I like the remake with Rick Moranis and all that, I still prefer this one a little bit more. So, oh yeah. So number 5 for me is Little Shop of Horrors.
And you mentioned Jack Nicholson. I totally did not realize he was in The Raven.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had so much fun watching him, just his facial expressions, mannerisms, or whatever. That was awesome.
Well, the thing is, though, is like you go back and look at like young Jack Nicholson, he kind of looks a lot like a lot of the leading men from back at that time. It's like, it's like, yeah, okay, he kind of looks like this guy or this guy or this guy. So they kind of looked a little bit interchangeable. So, it wasn't until like he started speaking or you see his face or his mannerisms or something, that's where Jack Nicholson stood out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, I was like, well, he just looks like all these other guys.
In fact,
Anyway.
if I'm not mistaken, there was a few moments where his facial expressions almost foreshadowed certain expressions you would see in The Shining later on. Yeah, which kind of threw me too. I was kind of impressed by that.
You even see a little bit of the maniacal in his face. You're like, oh yeah, you could tell he's going to be the Joker. You get the Joker Batman thing, and all that stuff. So, oh yeah, you see it.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Okay, my number 4. Interesting thing about this is what I'm going to hold up. It could actually be interchangeable through any of the movies on this. Yeah, Vincent Price collection. I'm going with The Mask of the Red Death. Damn good movie, beautifully shot. Honestly, that's a movie that that's something you can always say for Roger Corman is movies of this. I don't want to say caliber, but I want to say movies of this price point you don't think should look as good as they do, but they do. Every Roger Corman produced movie looks good, honestly. And I don't have it in my list, but even something like Carnosaur looks good, for what it is. But Mask of the Red Death is just, what can you say? It's just iconic. And honestly, now there is something that needs to be remade. They did the Fall of the House of Usher show, Do you want a Mask of the Red Death? It's just so damn good. And what more can I say? And it's got Vincent Price in it. What that automatically makes it 3 points cooler. It's just like the law. You put Vincent Price in something, goes up 3 marks. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
All right, number 4. This is the purest moment of nostalgia that I wish I could still see this movie today, not so differently than when I would see it as a kid. I can't stress how much this movie, and I don't know how watching it now, but it's one of those rarities that I remember as a kid, and I remember it having one of the greatest endings ever. I loved the poster campaign, the TV spots. I remember just being so intrigued or spellbound by the spots, and probably has a lot to do with seeing Jaws at 5 years old. But when Up from the Depths was unleashed, this movie had such a huge impact on me as a kid. And unfortunately, I watch it now and I have so screwed up the ending in my mind. I don't even know how I remember. In my mind at the end, I thought they were dragging the body behind the boat, strapped with dynamite or whatever, the explosives, and the prehistoric shark comes up, grabs the body, boom, blows up, end of movie. Everyone lives, everyone's happy. That's not what happens at all at the end. and then I'm watching the end going, what the heck is it? Where was I as a kid? What was I watching? Has the movie somehow changed since I was a kid till now? But I remember like the TV spots, and this is where like, Roger Corman as a producer was having an impact without maybe realizing how much of an impact he was having on kids that were watching this. But I remember like in the TV spot, and it is in the movie, but you got the guy that's taking pictures of, I think, photographing the model or whatever, and he's just in sort of knee deep in the water, and you kind of get the POV shot from the creature, as the creature in a sort of a Jaws like way is coming up behind the guy, and then of course grabs the guy and drags him under, and the girl's like, whatever. And I don't know. It's just one of those weird movies where like that poster had burned such an indelible mark into me. And I have nothing but fond memories of it as a kid. But it's one that today, unfortunately, I'll put on once in a while. And I struggle with it because I'm trying to rediscover that nostalgia. And it's one of those that it just doesn't quite, I don't know, it doesn't quite live quite up. But Sam Bottoms is in it from Apocalypse Now, so that's been a joy later on because I've become such a huge fan of Apocalypse Now, and he's in it. Who was it? James Horner, uncredited score. I thought that was interesting. Chris Wallace on the effects in this. Of course, he's going to have a huge career, and of course, he'll work with Cronenberg, and he'll actually take the director's seat for The Fly 2. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but in a little trivia, R. Lee Emery's in this.
Nice.
He apparently is towards the end of the movie, he's one of the crazy fishermen going out to hunt the creature.
Nice.
I have no idea where he is. I didn't go in there to look to see where he was, but I just saw on IMDb he is credited for being in here. So again, the limits to which Roger Corman's effect has, and James Horner. I didn't look for enough to see where his career really takes off, but just to think that he was attached to this. So unlike the next few to come, this one unfortunately doesn't quite stick with me as much today as it did. But as a kid, I had to mention it because as a kid, some of these movies were just really having their effect, and and that's in part the Roger Corman effect, but that got viewed a lot in my house as a kid, though, for sure.
Okay. Well, for my number 4, I decided to go with Boris Karloff and Jack Nicholson in The Terror. This is a good movie, and just this, you could tell watching this movie, this is definitely like a precursor to the Roger Corman Poe movies and everything. And Boris Karloff, you got Jack Nicholson, he's and there he is, and his character, I think it's one of the most impressive things is like if you were ever interested in just seeing Jack Nicholson do a movie where he just played it straight. He didn't go fly off the handle, none of the manic craziness or anything. Just see him play a straight leading man role. This is the movie to do it. He never starts acting mad. You don't get the facial expressions, none of that kind of stuff. And he's the soldier. He goes to this castle that is owned by Boris Karloff, and it's just Boris Karloff and Dick Miller in this castle. And it turns out that Boris Karloff's character is being haunted by the ghost of his dead wife, and then she appears to Jack Nicholson there, and he starts falling in love with her. And he's like, 1 minute they're kind of like, we need, Boris Karloff's like, we need to keep him here. Then the next minute he's like, we need to get him out of here. And then, so it's like, hey, or should I go? You're almost waiting for the song to play. And but it's like, he's continuing on there, and he's like, I need to unravel this mystery, what's going on. This is another one of those movies. You can find it any of those multi movies. Rob, I bet you that 50 movie pack, I'd be willing to bet you this is probably on it.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Probably, yeah.
And say you find this movie on any of these multi-movie packs and everything
Yep, it
else.
is.
Yeah. It's like this one here, the transfer's a little bit better. I heard that they did a new Blu-ray of this. I want to get it because I heard they say, they really did a great job in remastered the picture and everything else. And that I want to see because this is a good looking film. Like, it's well shot. The production design and everything is great on it and everything. And it's like, this is one of those ones I'd love to see this in a beautiful, cleaned up print. And it's a good story and everything else. And it does keep you into it and everything else. And if you like a good ghost story and like I said, if you're a fan of like the Poe, Vincent Price, Corman films and everything else, you're gonna love this one too. And it's like, okay, you don't have Vincent Price, but you still got Boris Karloff, and that's nothing to cry over.
Definitely.
So yeah, my number 4 is gonna be The Terror.
Nice. My number 3 jumps on something that Lonnie was talking about earlier. The Dunwich Horror.
Hmm.
Lovecraft. What more do you need to say? What I really dig about this movie is the fact that it really doesn't show a lot. But it still manages to ramp up the tension, and you still get that Lovecraftian, like, cosmic horror feel. It's something that could have very easily gone just into, like, your basic, like, satanic stuff. But they were able to capitalize on the Lovecraftian elements almost, like, perfectly, I think. This particular release, obviously double feature with Murders in the Rue Morgue. I think they're both Corman productions, actually, but a pretty decent transfer, honestly. I know there's a new Blu-ray from, is it Severin, I want to say? It's either Severin or Vinegar Syndrome or someone like that.
I think Arrow or 88 has one too.
Yeah, so it might be worth getting a copy of just that movie, which has, this has a commentary on it, but that's it. It's a fun flick though, and it's Lovecraft and Corman's attached. What more do you need?
That definitely is on my wish list. I don't have a copy of that in my collection, but that's my birth year, 70. I really need to get that. All right, number 3. Continue my love for Jaws-esque films. This one a huge step up though from the last one though. I guess I'm the nostalgia kid tonight. Piranha. My Roger Corman classic line here. This movie, of course, as a kid, this was such a great, great movie. I was, of course, a Joe Dante film, but I always forget Rob Bottin had a hand in this as well. So, there you go. Rob Bottin, has it. Chris Wallace was in there working on it as well. And I always forget this movie was 1978, but the thing that always intrigued me most about this film was the little bit of the story behind just the experimentation, turning the piranha into a sort of a military war project. And I think, and when the guy's telling who's that? That's crap. Who's that? That's Kevin McCarthy. When he's telling the story, they're on the raft. I think when they're on the raft on the river, and he's telling them, pretty much what was behind the experiment. But just the thought that you could unleash a creature like this in the rivers of Vietnam, I think was what it was. And it's just it's one of those weird movies where it's like when you get the backdrop, it's like that's pretty frightening actually to be sort of working on a biological war weapon to unleash on another country, and in the form of piranhas. And of course, I'm just reminding myself here. Dick Miller, Barbara Steele. I always forget those two are in it. Yeah, Rob Bottin. Always forget that he's we're already working here, getting going. So yeah, Piranha, one of the early films in the wake of Jaws, and of course there'd be a million of them, but I think this is one of the better ones.
Okay. My number 3 pick is going to be The Pit and the Pendulum. And
Nice.
it's one of my favorite Corman Poe adaptations. It's like, screenplay by Richard Matheson, who's a brilliant author in his own right. And then, just I remember as a kid in grade school, we were reading, well, actually, it's more junior high school. And we would start reading Edgar Allan Poe stories. And I remember, just visualizing it in my mind. And then, like you see like the book we had like an illustration of what, the pendulum would look like. And I just remember like, that is such a horrifying implement of torture. I always thought that just, it stuck in my head. And just, to me, it's just like, it's always working in my imagination and stuff. And I remember one day we were at a flea market, and I found the VHS tape of it was called Creepy Classics, and it was like kind of like a little bit of scenes, hosted by Vincent Price, and and he would show like little clips, he would show like Night of the Living Dead or Invasion of the Body Snatchers or whatever, and he showed the clip from Pit and the Pendulum, where he's getting ready, the pendulum's coming down, it's coming down more and more, and everything else, and just I'm seeing Vincent Price. It just made me want to watch it even more. It's just, I don't know what it was, just something about that story and everything, and just just the whole idea of it. And then when I watched the movie, it's like, I did, I mean, there's no such thing in my opinion as a bad Vincent Price performance. But I think what I really love about this performance in this movie in particular is that he starts off as so sad and tragic because he lost his wife and he clearly loved her. And then that progression as you go through the movie, you see him losing his mind and going insane, to where at the end of the movie, when he's full on insane and trying to kill people and stuff like this, and then you're like, you can't even hate him. Because you understand, this is a man who's been, he's just been pushed over the edge. So he's not a horrible figure. He's more of a tragic figure and everything else. I just think it's one of, to me, it's just absolutely one of Vincent Price's best performances and everything. And then, of course, you got the beautiful Barbara Steele, which, I mean, that's always welcome in any movie,
Indeed.
Her character wasn't very good in the movie, but, she was a nasty person, but, but even still, just all the elements of it, and yeah, just like I every once in a while I'm just like, man, I really want to watch that again. So my number 3 pick is probably gonna have to be The Pit and the Pendulum.
Nice. For number 2, I am coming with something relatively new, and that is Sharktopus. Roger Corman presents Sharktopus. This movie does essentially what like Sharknado did, but it does it like better. Where Sharknado was just kind of like goofy and fun, this does it like with some actual, filmmaking talent, I'll say. You have a shark and octopus hybrid going around eating people. What more do you need than a movie that shouts out, even in the trailer, Sharktopus needs our virgins. It is what it is, but it's, it's a movie that knows what it is. It knows it's not a serious film. And that is something about Roger Corman, though. He was very much, he wanted things to be serious. and a lot of the other movies we talked about, they are. You know, there's one movie I forget what movie it was, but and ended up being like I think it might have been Galaxy of Terror. I'm not sure, but one of them ended up being like funnier than he wanted. He was really pissed about it, you know. So he wanted stuff taken seriously, but by this point in his career, I guess he's just, you know what, make a fun little shark octopus movie, and it is what it is, and for what it is, it's damn fun. So yeah, number 2, Sharktopus.
Well, Glenn, you just said my number 2. I don't know if it's the movie you're thinking of though, because I'm not sure. But my number 2, Galaxy of Terror.
Oh yeah,
I cannot, of course, you know, the infamous maggot scene in there.
yeah.
But you know, when I was a kid, I don't think this might sound kind of weird. I don't think I was near as latched on to that scene as it kind of makes me giggle now looking at it, and just the notoriety that scene of in itself. It seems like anytime Galaxy of Terror comes up in discussion, that's the one thing everyone has to talk about is the infamous maggot scene. But as a kid, you know, it's funny the things that you sort of pass over, look past as a kid. You don't usually get into those, you know, moments, you know, near as much as this movie was. This movie really kind of scared me actually as a kid. I mean, deep space horror, it's one of my loves. We said it earlier, I think in a different genre like way though, but you don't get enough deep space horror anymore. Not like this. This was kind of I mean, thinking about it, this is sort of a callback to the old science fiction day. Well, when Roger Corman would have been directing science fiction. You know, you go to Angry Red Planet or, you know, something like that, you know, an updated 80s version of, you know, let's take exploitation and go off into the deep space. And I think what really caught me was some of the nightmare hallucinative logic of some of it. You got Robert Englund in there, you got Sid Hagen there, just two, right? You've got Tony Rando's attached to this. Of course, he'll go on to direct Hellraiser 2, which, you know, is a love of mine from the 80s. Of course, you know, the one, you know, side note that everyone does talk about, James Cameron's work in this movie. So again, you know, I mean, it's the ability of Roger Corman to, you know, sort of bring in his resources and allow people to just, and I think Roger Corman has said that, you know, working with the young James Cameron, everyone sort of knew this guy was going to go somewhere. I mean, he was just that kind of workaholic, and, you know, take what, you know, little you might have and just and this is another reason why, you know, in a lot of the movies, I mean, we're talking about, is why I wanted to get into collecting. I wanted to, you know, to kind of, you know, grab back onto that, you know, nostalgia where, you know, unlike Up from the Depths, I kind of laugh now. I put that in and I kind of laugh and just wonder, you know, about it a little bit. But this one, as weird as it is, maybe, I don't know, but this one I put in, man. I know the beginning starts off a little cheesy, you know, a little bit, but once you get out there and you're on the planet and things to get settled in, and you start having your, you know, characters hallucinating a little bit, seeing things they're not really seeing, the planet capitalizing on their fears. You know, I remember, I think it was the Sid Haig scene where the thing gets up, the glass or whatever gets up under his skin and just starts moving up under the skin, and you know, a lot of those scenes. It's a movie that I am so glad Scream Factory put out a pretty nice edition. And of course, again, if you saw this in the video store as a kid on VHS, of course you're walking home with it on the weekend. I mean, who would not rent this? I mean, this is like classic VHS rental material right here. And I don't recall ever being disappointed at all by this movie. But it's weird. It's like, I wish I could go back and, kind of sit next to my teenage self and like see how I'm reacting to a movie that I'm watching now all these decades later and see how I'm reacting. Because I do have some very, very fond memories of just being sort of freaked out by some of the, and I think, when I watch it now, I'm sort of intrigued by the thought of what this could look like on 4K. Some of the landscapes on the planet really do sort of work still, and I don't know. I hate to say I would love to see a remake of this because anytime you say that, and if you get it, it never lives up to what it could have been. But I don't know. I would love to see. I would love to see if a remake could happen to this. I would love to see someone who was motivated enough to want to bring this cover art to life.
Yeah,
That would make a pretty awesome remake, I think. If somebody was that dedicated to say, you know what, I remember as a kid renting that, and it was the poster art and the cover art or whatever, and I want to bring that artwork to life. Let's create a nightmarish planet that we've never seen before and scare the freaking crap out of people like they haven't been scared since Alien, in '79. I mean, you could do it, but unfortunately, we just don't see these things. So you have to kind of go back to the '80s when they weren't afraid to, of course, it helped having a drive-in circuit, right? When a lot of these movies would get their drive-in play, and or eventually VHS rental play, HBO. I remember probably seeing it on HBO as well. But yeah, I can't speak enough to how much things like Galaxy and Terra meant to me as a kid. I'm so glad they were there.
nice.
Okay. Well, for my number two, it's like, well, Rob, he mentioned the first one. I'm going to mention the second one. My pick is Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Oh, I love Slumber Party Massacre too.
So I love it because it's so batshit insane. It's ridiculous. And, you got this guy here who's, like, I have to admit, I remember like back in the day when I first saw the VHS cover of this. At first, I thought it was Andrew Dice Clay because that's who it looked like to me.
Yeah,
Like, wait a minute,
100%.
that plays in this, and then of course the drill with the guitar and everything else. I mean, it's like, oh man, of course, you got the beautiful scantily clad women and everything, and and I enjoyed the first movie, and it was just like this here, like this is going to be nuts. So I remember watching it and just like it's what you want to be. It's sleazy, it's gory, it's goofy, I mean, it's a good time, and it's just like you can just you put it on, you shut your brain off in a good way and everything, and you just be entertained by it. And I do remember, I'm sorry, I can't remember the actress's name now, but I was like, oh my God, that's the one. She was Robin in Friday the 13th Part 5. It's like, oh man. And she was also in Psycho 3 and everything. It's like, man, I always thought, yeah, she was definitely a crush of mine, but even remember her name. But anyway, though, I just thought it was so, just like he's sitting there, he's doing his little doo-wop dancing and everything else, drilling people and all that kind of stuff. And it just, like just to me, it's like, yeah, this guy is like, this is total Roger Corman behind this. It's like,
Oh,
I want the blood, I want the silliness, I want the boobs, I want all that kind of stuff. Like this just feels like everything Roger Corman signified. It's
yeah.
like when he produced a movie, this is what I want. So. But always, yeah, I always had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, my number two pick is going to be Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Very nice.
Wow.
That
So at
movie,
number one, I wonder if we're going to overlap it all. Number one.
you might. My number one is Humanoids from the Deep.
Nice.
I love this movie. I mean, it says it right on the front. They're hunting human women, not for killing, for mating. I mean, it it's so crazy and just all around insanity, but it works so well. And it's literal creatures coming up from the sea to rape women. And that's it. It's and another funny thing, it was directed by a woman.
Yeah.
This is another one. I think it might have been this one where the director was saying, you know, like she'd like shot this movie or whatever, and then essentially Roger came in and like, you know, put more naked women in it, put more kills in it, you know. And you know, but it works. It's a fun flick. And that's something you can always say for a Roger Corman film. You're always going to have fun. Good, bad, doesn't matter. You're always going to enjoy yourself when you come out of watching it. You know, you're never going to come out of a Roger Corman film angry that you saw it. You know, it might be like, yeah, that was a waste of time. You know, that was a bit, you know, like it wasn't the greatest thing, but you're never angry that you've sat through it. And I mean, I think that says more for his work than really anything else, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I've sat through some stuff that I have loathed. I've talked about it before, you know, some of the movies that I've watched that I just absolutely loathe. I've never had that problem with Roger Corman. And, you know, like I said, that says something. So yeah, my number one, Humanoids from the Deep.
That's one of the things we could say about Roger Corman is he was first and foremost, he wanted to entertain.
Definitely.
He wanted you to have fun, you know, with whatever it is that was laying out. So, yeah. So, I mean, I hinted at earlier. I had two women on my list, so this is the second one. Barbara Peters, right? Yeah. Humanoids from the Deep. You know, right with Galaxy of Terror. This is another reason why I wanted to get in collecting, because I wanted to, you know, get these things, you know, that I had fond memories of renting or setting my alarm, you know, for that 1, 2 in the morning wake up call, because I knew HBO was going to be having, you know, Humanoids from the Deep on. And, you know, I think, too, I mean, to this day, I mean, so much of their work in editing, just the fact they only had like maybe two full suits.
Yeah.
But editing makes it look like a legion of these things before CGI ever came along. I mean, it's possible with a little bit of work, you can create a few suits and make it look like you got 40 on hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know what to, I mean, you know, it's funny. It's like, you know, with how much Roger did to is sort of, well, you know, I know these words are overused today, but you think of diversity and everything else. But then, of course, you got the downside of hearing, as you mentioned, you know, the director talk about how ultimately what we see in the end is not her movie in its entirety. What we got is, you know, Roger Corman saying, thank you for what you did, but not let me finish it off for you. And so you got an uncredited director who came in and did the extra shots and got us the boobs and everything else. And in the end, I mean, you know, was some of the extra stuff needed? I don't know. Probably not, but it might not completely feel like a Roger Corman film if they didn't get the extra shots. But it still sort of works hand in hand together. I mean, this has got to be one of the great this is what happens when you start messing with the environment, dumping things in you shouldn't be dumping in. And this is without preaching environmentalism at you. It doesn't need to. It's just what happens, especially the finale. This is one of those movies that had one of the great finales at the end. When these creatures all start coming up and running havoc through the carnival, and you know, and they're all over the docks. And of course you got that Vic Morrow, right, in it.
Oh yeah.
You got that great moment between him and the other guy, the Indian guy, who they do not get along at all. But there's that great moment between those two at the end. And so there's a little bit of a redemption arc going on as well. And then, of course, you can't escape the end without the last, shot of the hospital scene and the pregnancy. And, it's kind of too bad in a way. It was kind of too bad we never got a sequel to this, but maybe it's better we didn't, or a Galaxy for that matter. It's two great movies that, and still are the quality of those movies, I think have survived time pretty well. I think you can, you watch Humanoids from the Deep, and this even more than the other ones. And this is a great sort of window into what it was like to live in the 80s, and going into video stores and renting. These were the movies that we were being, enjoying, being terrorized by, or just having fun with. And I kind of wish this would have been one I could have seen on the big screen, but I don't have any memories of seeing it on the big screen or even at the drive-in. But glad I saw it nonetheless. So, all right, Lonnie, take us home.
Okay, well, first of all, I need to apologize because I do have this movie on DVD, but I forgot to dig it out, so I don't have the physical copy to hold up. But my number one pick is going to be The Intruder with William Shatner. And that is a movie like it is, like we talked about earlier, how, one of the things that was great about Roger Corman was he worked in every kind of genre. And this is him doing like more of a serious dramatic turn. And in this movie, if you've never seen it, the idea is here's a small, just kind of small, nice little kind of Norman Rockwell town, and everybody's getting along and all this other kind of stuff. And then William Shatner's character comes in, and he is such a bastard in this movie. He is so awful. Like, he is the ultimate villain in this movie. But it's definitely one of the most compelling performances you'll ever see William Shatner give in the movie. He goes into this town, and what he does is he starts like he's like a master manipulator. He's knowing how to like get under people's skin and kind of play with their minds and kind of play on people's paranoia, and especially like when it comes, you got to remember this movie was made in, I think it was the 60s. So of course, there's a whole thing about racism and stuff like this, racial divide and everything else. And he's starting to like play with these people, and he's turning everybody against each other and all this kind of stuff. And he's like making, like he's trying to cause like, racial upheaval and everything, and getting, like white and black people turn against each other and fighting and everything else. It's almost to like what you're seeing today. Like you go out, you see like what's going on in the media, you see what's going on, movies and television. They're trying to put all this stuff out to try to make everybody turn against each other and try to fight each other. But what ends up happening is, as the movie goes on, like, the cracks start to show, and everybody realizes like, wait a minute, William Shatner's character, he's full of shit. He's saying things that aren't true, or he's doing things that, is like that don't make any sense or whatever else. And so ultimately everybody wakes up to him, but it's like he's just going on and on and on about like, yeah, we have to have, race wars, and we got all this kind of stuff, and women need to be put in their place and all this other kind of stuff and everything else. By the end of the movie, everybody realizes like, no, everything was fine until he came along. He came along and he tried to stir shit up, and by the end of the movie, everybody's trying to run him out of town and all this. Like I say, you watch it, it's kind of like, it almost seems like this is like almost a vision of what we're seeing now. Because now like, all this stuff comes out in the media and television, movies, TV shows, and everybody's just rejecting it because they know it's like you're just trying to cause problems when there are no problems. You're trying to make up situations. You're lying about things. You're trying to manipulate everybody, and everybody's starting to see through it and everything else. And just the idea that, I picked that because I just thought it was such a nice, I thought it was so great that, Corman could actually do a very well-made, hard-hitting drama with social commentary done well and everything else. And, great performances. Like I said, this is one of the most entertaining movies you'll ever see William Shatner do. And I can't praise it enough. And just to see him break away, it's like, okay, he broke away from the Westerns and the sci-fi movies and the horror movies and stuff. And he made this really good, well-made film. And just, so yeah, that's got to be my pick for number one for Roger Corman. Has got to be The Intruder. I think it's definitely one of his most well-made. The writing is good. Everything about it is just phenomenal. So yeah, my number one is going to be The Intruder.
Wow. Well, that's the second great surprise for me in this week. Then, Dementia 13 was a great surprise. Had no real idea about that film until I fell into it, and now I don't think I've ever. It seems like maybe the title's kind of vaguely familiar, but I was not aware of William Shatner or the story or that. That's intriguing. What's the release that you have on it?
Well, like I said, I don't have the
Yeah.
DVD.
Okay. Yeah.
If you can give me a minute, I can dig it out.
Well, we can look it up. That's interesting though. So that predates his Star Trek stuff, then maybe,
Yeah, I think so.
or right around the same time.
I gotta wonder, honestly, just hearing like Lonnie tell us that synopsis makes me wonder how much of that was an influence on Stephen King for Needful Things.
That's
Because admit it, it's more supernatural than Needful Things, but you got a guy coming in, stirring stuff up,
Yeah.
turning
Well,
people against.
it's funny because listening to Lonnie, whenever we talk about hard hitting social commentary, especially in the '70s, you're talking Wes Craven, Last House, Toby, Texas, Romero, Dawn, Night. You don't ever hear, oh well, Roger Corman produced a movie called The Intruder. Yeah. So who put that out?
I can't read it. I want to say Stream Media.
Huh. Interesting. Wow, I am definitely going to be looking up on that one for sure.
I think special features, Remembering the Intruder, all new featurette with Roger Corman and William Shatner.
Wow, I bet you that's awesome to watch.
It is a good.
Yeah, 1962. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, because Star Trek came out what, 63?
I think so. Yeah. I don't know.
Arriving in a sleepy southern town on the eye of integration, slick, charismatic Adam Kramer, William Shatner, is an ominous influence, inciting its white citizens into racial fervor and plunging the once quiet community into a state of chaos.
Wow.
This is easily like you're going to be like William Shatner is such an asshole in this movie, but God, you can't take your eyes off of him. Like his performance is so good in it.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. And like I was said, I wonder how much that might have influenced Stephen King with Needful Things.
I'd be willing to bet you is
because I mean that is the plot of Needful Things without the supernatural elements. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, wow, that looks to be actually the only release of it. Oh, hold on, no. There's there's that the you got, and there's okay, there looks to be one Blu-ray. One Blu-ray from France. 18 euros. So
that sounds like a film. I'm surprised Criterion hasn't jumped on.
I'm hoping that at some point, I hope that somebody, Criterion, Kino Lorber, or somebody get a hold of this and do a Blu-ray of it.
I could see Kino for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely Kino.
Yeah.
But yeah. I just think, I couldn't help but not pick this one because, like I said, I just thought it was so impressive that Roger Corman, he worked in pretty much like every genre.
Yeah.
He tried to do a little bit of everything. So and the fact that he was able to, so many directors and producers, like if they get popularity in one genre, they never break out of it, or it's very rare if they ever do. And the fact that he was, and I think a lot of it is because he always made his movies so cheap that it's like there was no like money, and he handled most of it himself. So, well, there was never anybody to tell him you can't do. I think that's one of the most impressive things about Roger Corman. He always made the movies he wanted to make, or
Yeah.
he would have the other people make the movies he wanted to make. So
it's funny when you talk about the great ones out there. There's one similarity there that compared with him, like somebody with Lucio Fulci, who did every genre under the sun. But all anyone really ever talks about is the from 79 to 82 moment that he had. But and rarely outside of that, some might start picking up on the giallos, you know, but rarely does anyone really talk about Four of the Apocalypse or the other two westerns, or the comedies he did way back, and the one science fiction piece he did way back. But these people were creative enough to jump genre and produce a lot of interesting work. Roger Corman being one of the greats, though, because between directing himself, producing, and just bringing in, just the world of talent and the companies he formed to distribute, distributing the one movie for Cronenberg. Roger Corman really probably is one of the few that had one of the great impacts. And
Yeah.
definitely. And I thought our fives and honorable mentions did a pretty nice way of spanning a lot of that.
Yeah.
Lonnie's number one definitely was a surprise for me. I was totally really unaware of that. That's interesting.
I'm sitting here like, oh God, please. The funny part is you two ended up selling on the same number one.
Yeah.
The whole time they're like, please don't pick. I picked this one for like number 3 or whatever. Don't pick this one. Don't pick this one.
Yeah, I was thinking for a moment we were going to somehow get through this 5 without overlapping at all, but I figure when I heard when Glenn threw out Galaxy as one of his honorables, I thought, well, we might get there. But then we get to 2, and I'm still holding on to my humanoids. I'm like, surely I'm not going to be the only one at 1 with humanoids, am I? I'm like, oh. But Corman, that's Corman's career, though. We really easily could have got to number 1 and all been different.
Yeah.
Could have been. Just happens weirdly. Me and Glenn were on the same wavelength on that one. Of course, if I would have known, even if I would have known more about Dementia 13 and been able to jump on a Vestron release or something, and that's the other thing with this release. You mentioned that. There goes half my stack. I want to out of the 50 here, there's probably at least 5 Corman movies in here. The one I was going to try to watch and never got around to it was Attack of the Giant Leeches. But there's a lot of good movies on here. Carnival of Souls is on here. House on Haunted Hill's on here. The Killer Shrews, I always have fun with that. I know these are probably not all Corman stuff now. But
Any movie where they just take dogs and put like rugs on them and then say that they're giant shrews, you have to love.
And your lead man is Roscoe P. Coltrane.
Oh, awesome.
I was just kind of running through. Of course, White Zombie's on here. That's one I really wish I had a really, really good release of, is White Zombie.
I have the Kino. It's pretty solid Blu-ray.
Dang. I love how Rob Zombie used that in Halloween as his backdrop there on the TV set. That was great.
Oh yeah.
Worked freaking perfection. So, any last thoughts on? I think we said a lot.
Yeah. No, just this was fun. Just talking about Roger Corman. I mean, like it's just amazing everything that he's contributed to the world of entertainment. Like some of our best talent is because of him. With his movies. That's the thing. People, oh, cheap B movies. It's like, like why don't you give him a shot? His movies are a hell. There's a reason this man ended up becoming the success that he was.
Oh yeah.
They may be cheap, but they're never bad. None of his movies were bad.
Nope.
No, and we just talked about him as a producer. I mean, if this would have been a show as him as director, that would have been a totally different, I mean, thing. But we would have probably had similar conclusions in terms of what he created as a director. But I mean, I thought we got into the five there. I thought for a moment there, you two were completely outclassing me with these great, films from the past, and here I'm stuck in the 80s with, my nostalgia. But that just shows you the power of, even in the 80s, he was having an impact. I mean, I can't tell you how lit my imagination was. And we're living in the shadow of Alien, much like we talked about Jaws. But I mean, Galaxy comes in, I'm just this kid there, I mean, spellbound by this movie, and not realizing in the moment that some of the nightmarish quality of it is, I'm going to see even more later on when I fall into Fulci and some of his movies. And it's funny because we talk about, that nightmare logic quality, really don't ever mention Galaxy of Terror, but that kind of taps into that
Oh, definitely.
a little bit. And that's something, golly, if somebody could ever, did remake it, but had a nostalgia, not just a nostalgia, but a true love for some of these qualities, there you could create something really terrifying by revisiting that kind of material. But the problem is being able to do it right.
Yeah.
And today it might be as hard today as it's ever been since cinema began, unfortunately, just because of the way things are today.
Yeah.
But so, well, and unfortunately, Brad wasn't here. It'd been interesting to see what he would have offered, but I know he was sort of on a Roger Corman kick with other things. And so that was one of the ideas he threw in. I thought, hey, yeah, he just unfortunately passed away. Let's do that. And that was a good choice.
Yeah.
So very, very good. Very good.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I guess this will conclude episode 5, dealing with Roger Corman and his produced films. Hope you guys all enjoy this. Remember, down at the bottom, all our links to our own personal channels, all down below. And I even I don't know if you guys know this, but I put up a playlist on the BodyBags YouTube channel for this collaborative effort. So
Nice.
there is a playlist there for the first 4 episodes. This will, of course, once it's up, will be in there as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever we come up with the next one.
Yeah.
All right, guys. You have a good night.
Yeah.
Good night.